Hey, everybody. Welcome back to Movie Chatter. We've got, I feel like it's been ages since I've actually gotten to record anything with anybody. But we are back. We are going to be talking about Christopher Nolan's Tenet today. And I'm hoping, maybe, if we're lucky, we will have more of a consensus about this movie than we did about Wonder Woman 84. Even though we did kind of all agree on Wonder Woman 84, we just agreed in different ways. We disagreed in the ways in which we agreed. So this one's going to be interesting. We are going to, if I can get my phone turned on mute, there we go. We're going to try to help you understand the movie as best we can, because we know it's a little bit confusing. Fortunately, it'll be easier to explain than Primer was. Not that much is more difficult than explaining Primer, but we're going to get to that in a minute. I'm Eric. I am joined tonight by Lou and Robin. Lou, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. I'm looking forward to talking about this movie today.
Awesome. And Robin, how are you?
I'm good. Except I need you all to do this every time you say Tenet. Just do it.
This thing?
Thank you.
See, this always reminds me of like a little mad scientist thing. Like,
I know, right?
Like,
So this is like the I know what I'm doing at all times.
Right, which I feel like is deceptive because I never know what I'm doing, like ever.
I was going to say, I don't know what I'm doing all the time.
I really feel like that's a bit disingenuous. So, hey, everybody in the chat room. Hey, Tom, how you doing tonight? Glad you could join us.
I have to get in the chat.
Yes, we have a chat room.
I never know how to do this. I'll figure it out.
That's okay. You're actually on the show. So like you're okay. You don't have to do anything special. But if you go to randomchatter.com/YouTube, Robin, then it is now Tuesday night. It's actually 9:00 p.m. We got a little bit of a late start, but alternating Tuesdays and Thursdays, we record Movie Chatter. And if you'd like to hang out live with us in the chat room, you can join us. Unless you're Robin, in which case, sorry, you missed your opportunity.
Challenge.
So, all right. Well, let's jump into this episode because this one's going to be a little bit tricky. Now, Tenet was technically released September 3rd of 2020, which means hardly anybody got to see it because, COVID. And then it came out on December 15th for like home video, iTunes, Amazon, wherever you want to purchase stuff. And it's released by Warner Brothers, so it will end up on HBO Max, presumably, at some point. Let's see what else. Ratings, it got a 7.5 on IMDb, 69% Metacritic, 70% Rotten Tomatoes, and 76% Rotten Tomatoes audience score. So, considering how complex the movie it was, those are pretty good scores. And Christopher Nolan. Let's talk a little bit about Christopher Nolan. So we've got Memento. We've got the Batman Begins trilogy, Dark Knight, and Dark Knight Returns? Interstellar, Inception. We've already covered Inception before. Dunkirk, which I still haven't seen. I know. Tim gives me a hard time about it. I still have to see that.
No, you're not missing much.
Lou.
Sorry,
Really?
I was not a
Okay.
fan. Yeah.
But Kenneth brought up.
Yeah, I know.
Oh, was he in that one too?
No, not a fan.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, wow. Listen to Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Wow. Okay. Robin's
Very
a fan.
careful. Charlize is going to think you're cheating on her.
Yeah.
I know, right?
Wow. Okay. Well, I will have to see Dunkirk at some point. Interstellar. I liked Inception a lot, and I love Memento, but Interstellar for me, I've only seen it once, and it was kind of like, it was okay. Maybe I just need to watch it again.
Yeah.
I don't know. There's another one where it was like a lot of just slow storytelling, and then eventually at the end you're like, oh, okay, I get it now. But his movies are very deep and they're very long, and this one is no exception. We'll come back to that in a minute. This stars John David Washington, who, by the way, is Denzel Washington's son.
I did
not know that either. And then I realized, wow, Denzel Washington's a lot older than I must have thought that he was. You know?
He looks like his father.
He kind of does a little bit.
Yeah, he really
To me,
does.
there's something. He looks like a cross between his father and Chiwetel Ejiofor. I know, weird. Anyway, so he plays the protagonist, known as the protagonist.
Actually,
Yeah,
yes.
that's what his name is.
Which
I laughed every time you said it.
I guess maybe it's intentional. Maybe Christopher Nolan doesn't want you to care about the identity of him or the characters. And we'll come back to that in a minute when we talk about the plot versus the character development. But it's almost like he's intentionally trying to steer you away from character connections and more toward a plot connection. But we'll come back to that. It also has our upcoming Batman, Robert Pattinson, playing Neil, best known for the Twilight series. And I have to say that after watching him in this, I feel a little more comfortable with him playing Batman. Because I was one of those people that as soon as they announced that casting, I'm like, oh no, that's not going to go well. But I have to say, after watching this, I'm much more comfortable with that. Lou, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think he did a great job in this. I mean, I don't know much about him and what he's done.
Twilight.
I mean, I know what he's done, but I haven't seen him in much.
Twilight.
But
That's
or anything.
You know.
Yeah. So without having seen him, I'm like, okay, well, whatever. I'm not. I haven't made any decisions yet because I haven't seen him, but he did a good job in this.
Yeah, no, I was pretty impressed. We also have, what's that? Kenny Baker, Ken. Watanabe.
Listen,
I don't know that many other Kens.
Listen, Kenneth
That guy
Branagh is the bomb.
Okay.
And it also has Elizabeth Debicki, who I have to say, once we get into this, she is almost playing the same character she played in The Night Manager, and I am a huge fan of The Night Manager. So if any of you have seen that,
Tim had mentioned that on RandomChatter recently, and I haven't seen The Night Manager, and he had said that you had brought that up. So we'll definitely talk a little bit about that. So the summary. I mean, most of you who are watching this, hopefully you've already seen the movie. And if not, we're going to spoil the heck out of this because we kind of have to.
Oh, we have to.
Yeah.
Have to.
So reading the summary, I guess, is kind of moot. But armed with only one word, TENET, and fighting for the survival of the entire world, a protagonist journeys through a twilight world of international espionage on a mission that will unfold in something beyond real time. So again, that tells you nothing.
That's crystal clear.
Yeah.
No, come on.
Clear as mud.
Don't even have to watch a movie.
Exactly.
Well, it was much like the trailer. The trailer didn't tell you anything either. I mean, I remember watching the trailers before, and I'm like, oh my God, Christopher Nolan, I can't wait to see this, but I have no idea what it's about.
Okay, so I'm with you there on the first trailer. On the second trailer, I also walked away not really understanding much, but I want to give props to a YouTube channel. I think we mentioned it before, New Rock Stars. In fact, I think we mentioned it when we covered Inception. They break down the second trailer really, really well. And I'm actually going to get to some of what they covered here in a few minutes. But I want to say that a lot of the analysis of the physics involved and all that I'm going to get to really comes from that channel. So I want to give a shout out to them. But yeah, there was actually some stuff in that second trailer that you could kind of get where they were going with the whole time reversal inversion concept. I was surprised at how much he was able to extract from that trailer about the nature of what's going on in the film. Because I couldn't. I was lost. But yeah, this was one of those movies where you didn't really know too much going into it. And then I have to say, I got it the first time around. It was the second viewing where I really fully understood, like throughout the movie, I could see all the different intricacies that were laced throughout the film and could really appreciate the depth of what Nolan did. And then on the third viewing, like I was solid. So now you guys, neither of you saw it in the theaters, obviously. How many times did you guys see it? Lou, you saw it more than once? Twice? Okay, Robin?
Oh, so it's 3, 2, 1. We're perfect.
You've only seen it one time?
Yes. You know why?
Because it's long?
Tell us.
I had to rent it.
Oh.
So, and I couldn't cram it in all the, but it's okay because it was a very intense watch. I got this. Don't worry about
I have to say,
don't ask me to explain.
I have to say, Robin, if anybody who, if they only saw it one time, might still be able to walk away with a decent enough understanding of it for an in-depth conversation, it would be you. So.
Oh, thank you. That's like really nice. Yeah. Is it my birthday? Why is he being nice?
We're not doing any musicals though. No musicals.
But here's the thing. I knew you guys from the words that I didn't understand in the text we all exchanged.
Yeah.
I knew you guys were going to cover that stuff. So I'm here to talk about all of the fantastic reasons why you should watch it anyway.
Okay. That's fair. All right. So here's what we're going to do. This was a tricky movie to understand. So I'm going to break down the physics of what's going on. But before I put Lou to sleep here, and to be fair, when he starts dozing off, I mean, he gets up like crazy early in the morning. So, but I'm going to try to do it in a way that is easily understandable. I'm not into physics. I'm not a scientist or anything like that. I'm going to break it down in a way that hopefully is going to be understandable and will help you get what's going on, because there's some complicated things here, and some of it, if you don't even like, if your brain starts to hurt, it's fine, just skip over that part.
So
it'll be okay.
Before you go into that, I want to bring up one thing that you had brought up on Random Chatter probably when you first saw this in the theater, and that's about the audio.
Oh my gosh. Okay.
And you were mentioning how bad it was in the theater, and you know, we were wondering if it was going to be remastered for video release and so forth.
Let me explain what the issue is
iTunes
first. So for those who might not know or haven't seen it, or if you like watched it on your iPhone or something like that, if you've got an audio system that is capable of delivering a full dynamic range and a full frequency spectrum, like really good lows, really good highs, all that kind of stuff, or if you're in a theater, there were a lot of scenes where this kind of low rumble of bass was so loud that it overpowered the dialogue. And of course, you got characters in this movie with accents. It was and words that are complex and stuff. It was really hard to understand what was going on because you couldn't understand the dialogue. And it was so bad. Plus, there were parts where, where you get that big boom and your chest kind of rumbles a little bit because it's so loud in the theater. Mm-hmm. In the theater, it was so bad that, like, because those cavities inside your body with loud noises will vibrate, typically your lungs, to the point where, like, loud concerts, you can actually bruise your lung tissue from the vibrations if they're too loud. So my nasal cavity was vibrating at certain points, and it sustained. It wasn't like a big boom. It would sustain for like 20, 30, 90 seconds at different points. It was really, really bad. Mm-hmm. But yeah, so that was one of probably the biggest complaint about the movie online was the audio mixing. It was legitimately terrible. But at home, like on my system, it wasn't too bad. I've got like a cheap sound bar, and it was okay. But Lou, what was your experience with it?
So yeah, I have it on iTunes, and I just purchased this year a new dead-on receiver that does everything up through and including Dolby Atmos.
Nice.
Not that I have all the Atmos speakers, but I've got a pretty good speaker selection in the room. And we're watching this, and I'm going, there's a happy medium between too loud for the effects and loud enough to hear the vocals, the dialogue. Right. And I couldn't find that, and I'm like, okay, this kind of sucks. So we ended up watching a movie way too loud for what we had to watch, and you're right, some of the effects noise and some of the even just the music was insanely loud compared to the dialogue. Yeah, which is frustrating. And on my second viewing, I watched it with subtitles turned on and the audio turned way down, which made a lot more sense because you could understand what they were saying. I'm like, oh, that's what he was talking. Oh, right. And when you have a movie like this where there's that much in-depth discussion about what is going on, you're like, okay, that helps me quite a bit. Yeah. So it was frustrating from that standpoint, but the audio otherwise was other than being too loud, it was good. Yeah. I mean, even at times the sound effects and the music in the background sounded like it was playing in reverse.
There were times when it was.
to kind of go with the events going on. You're like, okay, so if you're hearing sound effects in reverse, you're like, okay, now we're, which direction of the movie we're in and so forth. We'll get into that a little bit later, but yeah, it was very well done, and it was just surprising with as much as he pays attention to audio in his movies that this was that bad.
That's the biggest confusion for me, is how the ball got dropped here, because like you said, the actual effects themselves were brilliant. The music done by the same guy that does The Mandalorian. It was all good quality stuff. It was just mixed horribly. The levels were way off, and I'm really surprised that this got out the door, and Nolan thought that this was okay. Like there was some oversight somewhere that was missing.
Yeah,
I don't know, but definitely watching it with the subtitles makes all the difference. And if you've watched it once and you're going to go back and rewatch it again after listening to this episode, definitely turn the subtitles on. And if you've got some other audio settings in your sound system that you can adjust to like reduce loud noises and things like that, you might want to consider turning that on too.
All right, look, Christopher Nolan is as a director is not only known for sound, he's also known for his visuals. So I think you have to take this as a package deal here. And so if you marry the sound and the visuals in the art of storytelling, you can forgive some of the sound blips, let's say. No, Lou says no.
No,
that's okay.
When you couldn't understand the dialogue because you couldn't hear it, it doesn't make any sense. How did that happen?
I talked to Tim about the experience that you and he had when you watched it, Robin, and I can tell you that your experience with it was less affected by this issue than had you gone to a theater. Like in a theater, it was physically painful at some points. Like I was in like physical discomfort, number one. And then number two, like Lou said, you missed key pieces of dialogue that were key to understanding the film. And again, the quality of like where he put the sounds, what the sounds were, and the artistic use of sound, brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. They just needed to adjust the volume level at certain points. That's it. Like it was such a minor thing to be able to fix. I don't understand how they missed it.
And that's one thing that I will say this about my home system. The Yamaha receiver I had in the past had a night setting on it, which was fantastic because I could lower the effects and enhance the dialogue in the center channel, which I don't have in this one receiver now, but would have probably benefited from that in this movie.
What I think what you're getting to though, Robin, he does, like, probably more so than any other director I can think of off the top of my head, does such a brilliant job of blending the visual editing and the audio editing as far as it wasn't so much audio editing as it was mixing. I think that's an important distinction, but he does such a good job of blending those two. And I think that he succeeded really well in this movie with that. It just needed a volume adjustment was all. That's my opinion, but definitely subtitles. Like, big help there.
Oh, yeah.
All right. So before I get into kind of understanding the movie, let's just hit the basic impressions. I want to know what you guys thought without diving too much into analysis yet. What was good and what was bad? So, Robin, what did you like about the movie and what did you not like?
So I love that it was both. I love that it's visually appealing. I love that he can tell us. He could take the Little Red Riding Hood story and tell it in such a complex way, and I would still fall in love with it. Like, right? I love the complexity because it engages my intellect, and it doesn't insult my intellect.
Right.
And he doesn't stay so long in one thing. You're in constant motion, and that to me is the hallmark of a great director who can keep you in this nice momentum, and keep the story rolling along, and not forget anything. So he doesn't gloss over. There were no huge points in the story when I didn't feel like I was completely lost. And I felt comfortable in his hands, knowing that he was going to catch me up if I just played along.
Right.
Right. So he was really good at helping me suspend my disbelief, even though I was in my living room in the middle of COVID, in my jammies. Like it's nice to be taken on that kind of ride. So that I forgot that, gee, I should really let my dog out because, this is a very long movie, right? Like the dog is like, mom. I'm like, yeah. Right. So I love that. That's the kind of movie that I need to be thrown into, especially in times like this.
Right. All right, Lou, initial thoughts, good, bad?
Good. I enjoyed the movie after the second viewing at the end of it. Unlike Robin, I was a little bit concerned going into this and feeling completely lost at points. I remember at one point we had to pause for something and looked at my wife and I'm like, don't even ask because I don't know where we're at. I'm like, just give it time. But, I have no idea. It felt very frustrating because, again, without the dialogue the way you should have been able to hear it, I was missing huge portions of what they were talking about in the very beginning of the movie. Which would have helped out quite a bit.
Yeah.
And, so I don't know if it helped out just reading it and knowing the dialogue or the fact that I know the story now in the second viewing and I can now get the dialogue. Those two things together, help me out quite a bit. But, I thought it was a fantastic movie. I mean, I will say this about his stuff and in general, I always harp about this, that we need original stories, not just rehashes of whatever's out there. And he does fantastic original stuff. I mean, this is just wonderful.
I'm going to say it's probably both the subtitles and just understanding the story a little bit more the second time through. Because you have a little bit better idea of what to look for and what types of things to look for. And there are definitely things there to find that you will not have caught the first time around. I agree emphatically. I think that this is such a brilliant example of bringing something new to the table. We've seen so many time travel movies before, and this is a very different take on that. The concept I thought was brilliant. The complexity of the concept, if you really dive into the whole thing and the lore and the stuff that's happening in the future and all that, then there's a lot to unpack there. But if you don't dive that far in, you still have a lot of content just on the surface. So it can hit people at whatever level you're able to consume this movie at. And I really appreciate that as well. And then the choreography, I can't even imagine how you would script out a fight scene where one person
backwards
it's in a melee battle. Like the end scene was incredibly impressive. But even aside from that, the most technically impressive thing to me in the movie was the melee combat in the second act, where you've got one character who's fighting through the fight in forward time and one who's fighting that same fight with that same character in reverse time, and trying to script that out. Like the fight choreographers, holy crap, they must have, like the meeting for that and him describing what he wanted them to come up with in a fight scene. And them just shaking their heads like, I don't know what kind of drugs you're on, man, but that's just not a thing. That's not going to happen.
Well, I have to tell you, there was a part of me who, I don't know if you ever did this as a teenager, but certainly we did because maybe it was popular to do. But, you play records backwards. And it seems so simple. Like,
that explains a lot about her and her satanic influences, doesn't it, Lou? I get it now.
Yeah, exactly.
So right. It seems like a very simple thing. If you want something to go backwards, play it backwards. Yeah. But it's not that simple.
Right.
You don't just play it backwards. You actually have to backwards map everything and then forward map it and then backward map it again to make sure you got all of the pitfalls that you need to then, gloss over or put little wood putty in or, whatever you need to do in order to make that happen. Simply brilliant.
Yeah, because there's a point at which in a fight where, and this is supposed to be someone who's trained as an operative, right? So he knows how to fight. If there's an opening, you're going to take it. So you can't leave any opening either forward or in reverse. And that is just to be able to plug every single one of those holes is incredible. Like that blows my mind. But anyway, so initial thoughts. I loved that aspect of things, the scripting in the pincher movements and in that scene. The only downside that, aside from the audio issue, the only thing that really I'm not too sure about was the lack of any character development. Again, we talked about the fact that the main character is just called the protagonist, and it's all about plot. It's very little about character. So it does present a question. How much can you invest in the plot if you're not also investing in the characters? And I kind of feel like the more I watched the movie, the more I was able to invest in the characters. But it does kind of present that question out there. And that's something that we'll have to take a look at. So our initial thoughts out of the way, we're going to come back to some analysis in a minute. But here's kind of understanding the movie. I'll try to go through this quickly enough that we don't lose anybody. You can go back and revisit this if you want. So TENET, the title, it's a palindrome, right? It reads the same thing forward as it does backwards. And it comes from something called a Sator square, which is like a four-dimensional, like a grid palindromic matrix found in the ruins of Pompeii. Which is ironic because Maximilian, as a kid, is visiting Pompeii at one point in the movie. But so there are 5 rows of 5-letter words. The first row reads Sator, Sator, which happens to be the name of the antagonist in the film. The next one is Arepo, Arepo, which happens to be the name of the forgery artist that Kat gets her painting from. And then the middle line, you have TENET, which is the name of the movie and the name of the organization in the movie. The third one is opera, which is Arepo backwards, which is, the big scene at the beginning. And then the last one is Rhodas, which is Sator backwards, which is also the name of the security company at the Oslo airport.
Oh, right. Okay.
So it's kind of interesting. It's clear that this ancient artifact, like in real life, was something that Christopher Nolan used in the movie. And the time travel in this, it's not what we're used to in time travel, right? It's not like Back to the Future where you just teleport yourself back to the 1950s. So it's just reversing directions without any interruption.
But this is why I liked it so much. This is why I don't want to call it a time travel movie because it's sort of like putting your foot in the stream and then kind of taking it out and then putting your foot back in the stream and then kind of taking it out. It's a interruption. Or a manipulation. I really don't want to say it's time travel. Don't make me say it's time travel.
But it is. You're traveling through. We're all traveling through time right now. But then it's traveling back through time, and then traveling back forward through time again. There are actually points where it, like Neil loops over top of himself like 6 times. At one point. So it's not unlike Primer.
I wish I could.
You want this really bad, Robin. I know you do. You want it to be not time travel because you don't want to have to admit that you loved a time travel movie. Because that whole subgenre is just something that
it's a
subgenre. You can say it. It's okay.
At some point 10 years from now, when we're still podcasting about movies, I will have a satisfactory explanation about these types of movies that will please both of you old
and then
gents.
You can come back in time and tell us now, and then these episodes will be different. Score.
And you'll have to watch The Greatest Showman again.
Oh my gosh, no. Right now I am all for time travel not happening. I'm okay with the lack of that. Now, okay.
Anyway.
Wow. So one thing, the most important thing to understand in this movie in regards to, and we're going to loosely refer to it as time travel, Robin, for the sake of our audience, to help them understand. There is only one timeline. This is not something where there are divergent timelines. This is not like Looper. Okay?
Right.
They cannot change anything. The thing that Neil keeps saying in this movie, everything that happens, that is the reality of this movie. The argument that the scientists in the future make, what they're trying to do is they are trying to be able to change things. The idea that's presented in this movie is that those future scientists are operating under a false premise. Okay, that their theory is incorrect. Okay, so I know there are a lot of people, well, wait, but the whole thing the bad guys were trying to do disproves this whole thing. No, it doesn't disprove anything. The bad guys were wrong. They were incorrect in their assumptions. Okay, so there's one timeline. Again, I highly recommend you go search YouTube for New Rock Stars and look at the video they did for the second trailer. And about 4 minutes into this, he points out that in that trailer, there's a whiteboard in the lab. So remember in the first act where he's initially being taught about time inversion, there's a whiteboard in the back. And there are formulas written on that whiteboard. And he was able to figure this out just from watching the trailer. That the equations in that are part of Maxwell's equations. And this is a real thing in science. And it has to do with the second law of thermodynamics and entropy and antimatter and various other things. Okay. So there's this concept of entropy, which is typically referred to as the measure of general disorder in a system. Okay. And a really good analogy for this is if you take hot coffee. Okay. There's very low entropy in hot coffee. You have this cup of coffee. It's super, super hot. And the air around it is not as hot as the coffee. The coffee cup is not as hot as the coffee. And your hands touching the cup, not as hot as the coffee. But if you leave it sit there long enough, entropy occurs and the heat from the coffee dissipates into the air. It dissipates into the container. It dissipates into your hands, which is holding the container. And it reaches a state of equilibrium, right? And that's considered high entropy. This next sentence is where you need to turn your brains off, okay? Because we have certain audience members. I won't mention David's name, but we have certain people in our community who will be already typing an email saying that's not actually what entropy is. So for those people out there, entropy is actually, again, turn your brains off, a measure of the number of possible microstates of a system in thermodynamic equilibrium consistent with its macroscopic thermodynamic properties. I had to watch a YouTube video by a physicist who was breaking down the movie and explain that. So this isn't exactly what entropy is, but it's close enough. So the whole concept in this movie about the turnstiles and stuff where they go in, there's a red room and a blue room. Okay. So if you go back with that idea of the hot and cold particles, right? And let's say red is hot and blue is cold. And if you have them in two separate rooms, they each have their own state of equilibrium, right? Mm-hmm. All the blue particles are all the same temperature. All the red ones are all the same temperature. If you open a door between those, though, they mix. Okay. Mm-hmm. So there's this concept called Maxwell's demon. Let's say that there is this demon who has control of that door in like an instantaneous state. So he can let some particles in and not other particles, and he can control that to create basically breaks in entropy, in the state of equilibrium. And this is where it gets a little complicated, but if you can, entropy is considered a constant in the universe. If you can make that no longer a constant, then that means things like the flow of time are also no longer constant. And that is the premise that this movie uses. So there's actually diagrams of that on the whiteboard. You've got 2 rooms with red and blue particles bouncing around, and then you've got another one below with Maxwell's demon, and the particles are now intermingling and stuff like that. So if you look at that diagram on the whiteboard, we see the physical rooms for that in the movie, right down to having blue lights and red lights. Okay?
And red teams and blue teams.
And red teams and blue teams as well, moving forward and backwards through time, respectively. And that's also why we get into things like the car explosion. Okay? When you have a release of energy and it releases heat from an explosion, well, if you were going backwards through time, you're actually collecting heat in that moment. So the part of the heat, so if that's going backwards while you're going forwards, you're actually losing heat, and that's why he experienced hypothermia after the car explosion.
During a fire, at the fire.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Lots of concepts like that this movie delves into that you don't have to get, but then if you do get it, there's a whole nother level of things going on there.
But that's the brilliant part of this movie, and that's the brilliant part of the director. He was able to take that very heady, very academic, right, concept, and I could understand it. Now, when you guys were like applying all the E's with the fees at the end, right, in the text messages, I was like, I don't care about that. This was a really good movie because not only intellectually, but I could feel what he was saying, and I didn't have to explain it to my mind, and my mind didn't have to explain it to my body. We could just enjoy it. And that's what I liked.
That's one of the great things about this movie is that you don't need to know all the physics of it. You don't, and you probably shouldn't even try because it
I don't know. Trying can be fun though.
It can be, but you know, the movie itself is entertaining, and there's enough of a mystery about some of the stuff that is like, yeah, okay, I don't need to know the nitty gritty. You know, I don't need to know how to build a rocket to understand a rocket launch into space. It's that kind of a concept where you know enough about it, they're going to give you some details, and then don't worry about it. You know, just go for the ride.
I'm going to present the flip side of that, though, and you're right.
Okay,
you're absolutely right. To me, the flip side of that is if you break down something like Star Wars. Okay, well, there's no sound in space. There's no gravity in space. There's no this and that. There's so many ways in which the physics of Star Wars just falls apart at the seams. But we love Star Wars because it's a fun experience. This movie, much like Nolan's other stuff, you can actually delve into it a little bit. And I mean, I'm no quantum physicist, but just in looking at some of these YouTube videos and looking in this deeper, there's some interesting concepts in here. And I'm no smarter than I was before, but like there's some good stuff here. And he follows it. Like he, again, entropy isn't exactly related to time travel. So that's like the one suspension of disbelief from a scientific point of view that you have to accept. But just that one thing, everything else about the physics of this, even at a basic level, holds together. And so it gives you an additional layer of something to really enjoy. And like, wow, this could actually work out this way. And like the explanation I just gave, that wasn't overly complicated. I'm guessing at least 2 or 3 of you out there kind of kept up with it, right? And yet it gives, like, he's consistent with that. He keeps up with it. So like the concept of the catching the bullets, that's kind of a cool movie effect, right? But then if you look at the physics, the science of it, he's not actually catching the bullets at all. The bullets are being fired. It's just that we haven't seen them be fired yet. So the bullets we are seeing the actual firing of the bullet, not catching. We're just watching it in reverse. Very simple sort of thing. A lot of people caught that in the movie and understood it. But even the characters in the movie are talking about catching bullets. Well, they're not actually catching them. They are doing the firing. It's just that the firing hasn't happened yet, and they're seeing that process backwards. That's it. So it doesn't have to give you a headache, and yet it keeps up with all of that. So that's I think that's really impressive that he's able to pull something like that off in a way that people are able to, like the whole concept of not being able to breathe oxygen because the oxygen permeates the lung tissue differently if you're in the opposite state of entropy. Like, there's some science behind that, but you don't have to get that for the movie. You just need to know, oh, they're in an environment where they can't breathe normally because weird stuff. So have the masks on.
Yep. And also, they didn't need to explain, you know, how the turnstiles work. We don't know. We don't care. They just work. Right. It's kind of a kludgy mechanism to do it, but I'm like, okay, yeah, I'll go with it. I don't have to understand how, why, or where we got these things from, but
it's cool that it looks like the whiteboard in the sense that it's just two rooms and you enter in one direction and come out. Like, how the turnstiles work and what's going on mechanically once they close. Yeah, you're right. Who cares? But physically, it looks simple enough that you get it.
But notice he built on things that we know. And this is what really good educators and really good filmmakers do, right? We know turnstiles. We know them first from dark rooms, right? We have a dark room at the college where I teach, and it's really freaky walking into that space, that turnstile, if you will, from the light into the dark. And there is a slight moment when you're like, wait, do I want to do this? Wait, what's going to happen? Wait, right? Even though I've been through it a million times, it's just this incredibly cool thing that happens. And he was able to build on that prior knowledge that some of us have, right? Some of us have been through turnstiles in subways or airports or wherever you go through them. So you know you're passing from one state into another or one place into another. And he was able to do that with this very complex physics type of thing. And that's the brilliance of the storytelling that we get. He is quite simply an amazing storyteller who's really good at casting.
Yeah, we get it. Kenneth Branagh's in the movie. We heard.
Yeah, just
Bert told us.
I mean, it's a bad Russian accent, but still.
Okay. I don't know Russian, so I can't say that it was good or bad.
I'm just saying.
So the one thing I'll say that I benefited from the second time around knowing the dialogue was the dialogue that I missed in the first time viewing it was of the I'm losing track of the term they used. What was the term they used for the device they were trying to collect and save?
The algorithm.
The algorithm. Yeah. And there was a line in there where they talk about making the algorithm into a physical form, which I totally missed. And I'm like, it's not an algorithm. It's a physical. What are they talking about? That's what I was very confused about a lot of it. I'm like that, and then the second time through, I'm like, okay. So if you had done the audio correctly the first time, I would have caught that. It would have been a whole lot more sense to me watching this movie the first time. I'm like, Jesus. So that was one little thing that bugged
And the funny thing is when you get like big audio moments like that, typically they're in action scenes, and then the audio kind of like calms down when there's exposition or dialogue going on. And in this movie, that wasn't the case.
Right. So having them talk about that thing as the algorithm for most of the movie was just bugging me to no end.
I can see that
because it didn't make sense. And then after even the second time through, I'm like, okay, so you made the algorithm into a physical form. What the hell does that even mean? That's okay. I'll go with it. It's a device. You're using this thing. It's a thing you could hold and feel. Yeah. I get it, but that to me didn't make any sense at all.
Yeah, it's one of those suspension of disbeliefs. Think of it as like Data's positronic brain from Star Trek or something. Like it's.
Yeah.
It's better than having a case that you open and just see a shining light.
Yeah, at least they didn't go the Pulp Fiction route.
Yeah. Even though
I'd been okay with it because they wouldn't be calling it an algorithm. I'm like, okay, whatever. That's my little pet peeve, but anyway.
Okay. But an algorithm is a bunch of different components of an equation that fit together. So it would be possible to take that and quote encode it in a bunch of physical pieces that connect together. And then if you scramble those pieces, the algorithm itself is scrambled. And unless you have a key to put that back together, so it would be almost like a Rosetta Stone or those little twisty box things like a codex. in the sense that it's a physical form that unless you know which order to put the things back together, then whatever's inside of it that flows in certain directions and stuff, you don't know the path it's supposed to take.
Right.
That's kind of how I interpreted it, but you're right. Like you kind of do have to figure that out a little bit on your own.
It seemed a little kludgy to me, but
again, that didn't break anything. Like you could just, again, if you knew what the characters were saying.
Not hearing the part where they made the algorithm into a physical form, that really broke things for me. But anyways, not that I'm bitter.
So you guys got the whole idea, because I didn't get this until solidly until the third viewing of what the end game was for the future bad guys, right? Like, did that make sense to you? Did you get what they're trying to do?
I think so. I mean, they mentioned it a few times throughout the movie in different ways that they were trying to recreate the past to give them a better future. But then we're finding out that if this works, it's going to destroy everything. So
I kept thinking, okay, so they're trying.
What they were going to do.
They're trying to go back and make certain bad things not happen and then relive it, or they're trying to go back and like live their life in the present where things are good, or what. But it wasn't until this third viewing where I got that they were trying to make everything reverse and basically live through history backward. So there would be no more forward through time from that point. The world itself, because they talk about the fact that when you flip through time, the environment goes forward. The environment's entropy doesn't change, just you, or whatever goes through that. We'll call it the demon's door, Maxwell's demon. Whatever goes through that demon door is inverting, but nothing else is. They were talking about inverting the entire world so that after this climate change destroys everything, now they're going backwards through the year, 2075, 2074, 2073, 27, back toward today, living backwards. I didn't get that until the third viewing. Is that what you guys interpreted their goal?
Yeah, I think I got it the second time through that's what they were going to live things in reverse, but didn't make a lot of sense to me because living in reverse was awkward
ending it
at
anyway.
best.
Yeah.
Well, again, they did make it kind of clear that like the future scientists were supposed to have been incorrect about whether they even whether that was real or not.
I think what I got was that ultimately they needed to stop him from ending everything right now. And I put a little bit of faith in they'll figure it out if we could just do that. Because what I finally got was he himself held the key to end everything right now. And that's all they were trying to stop.
Right. Yeah. It's that's the one part of the movie that I really struggled with trying to figure out is what the end game was. Because even then, what you just described would be kind of not fully in alignment with the future bad guys end game. Because he'd be ending things sooner than what they would be able to get to experience. So
well, but it held
weird
with the storyline of if I can't have it, nobody can.
Yeah.
So don't forget, there's that storyline going through that, he lives out in personal relationships and then out in the real world where if I can't live because I got this cancer or, whatever, then nobody can.
And I think that's really...
So that held for me.
I got the impression that he was on a mission, when he first found that first part and there were instructions there, they wanted him to piece it all together, buried in that spot so that they could find it in the future and use it. But then because he became irradiated with everything and that gave him pancreatic cancer as a result, he was going to end things then instead of allowing them to end it in the future. So
the one thing I didn't get was what was that dead man switch they had for him where he died?
That was going to trigger the algorithm.
Happened?
Yeah, it triggered that. That's what triggered that.
So that would have activated, and the time reversal would have started from that point. So the world would have ended and only had been moving backwards through time as of that point when he dies.
When he dies. Okay.
But because they found it and they were able to get out of that explosion thing and all that, that didn't happen.
Yeah, because they didn't explain that very well either about how they averted that, because he still died.
And so maybe that goes back to the idea of, because it was assembled, the explosion was supposed to lock it down so that nobody would find it or get to it. And then maybe it just, like, as it goes through time, it happens on its own, or maybe like, I don't.
Well, the explosion was supposed to seal it up so that nobody would get to it. And the bad guys in the future who would find it 200 years from now knew exactly where it was. Right. That was their point. But what I didn't get was, how would that trigger the algorithm when he died if it wasn't even put together yet?
It was physically put together.
But he was checking his Fitbit the whole movie. Yeah. And it wasn't assembled until the very end.
That's a good point.
You know, like they had the one piece they found in the opera and so forth. So I didn't understand when that was taking place, or what. See,
I thought it was linked to the explosion, and he didn't want that thing to explode until he had the algorithm in place and physically located there.
Okay, but so you.
And I agree, that breaks a different part. Then
it was triggered to the.
But the co-location breaks the physics.
Yeah. So my understanding was that it was to trigger the explosion at the site.
You mean the nuclear test?
Right. And then that would...
But why would the dead man switch have effect even 20 years before that? Because he was checking that Fitbit.
I don't know. Maybe he had the explosives in place back then, and it didn't. I don't know. I don't.
Yeah. So that was kind of weird.
That's a mystery that still... If our audience members out there have any insights on that, go to randomchatter.com/Discord, join our Discord server, and in the MovieChatter channel.
Yeah, or Christopher, if you're watching, reach out to us.
Could you just reach out to us? And I gotta say something. Emma gets a lot of credit here. So he's doing a lot of this writing and producing and directing in concert with his wife in a bunch of different iterations. Inception.
And his wife is who?
Right. Emma Thompson. Mm-hmm. So and it seems to me that we have a lot of mature female characters, or characters who mature throughout the film in a very elegant way. And I'm going to lay that on her. And I don't know why yet, but maybe when another Christopher Nolan movie comes out and we record it, I'll remember I said this and be able to say that. But as I read through her creds and what he's done, and I think about these female characters, I was particularly drawn to, I don't know what her name in verse was, but Elizabeth Debicki.
Cat.
Because she played the same character as the character she played in The Night Manager, and that was a very intriguing character for me. She was a flawed character, but a strong character and a redeeming character, and I like that if you're going to present women as an evolving, maturing character in a movie, to have them start out strong but possibly broken and end up strong and whole in the end. I like that strength in the female characters that he has presented.
It's interesting because I've seen a lot of analysis online about the fact that he doesn't present very strong female characters, and while I don't think there was a quantity of them in this film, I did feel like Kat's character had one of the more interesting character progressions through this story. And again, all of the character progressions were of marginal depth at all, because it was a very plot-heavy movie, not a very character-driven movie. But of the ways in which there was character development and things were character-driven, I feel like hers was the most compelling story and the most interesting story. So yeah, I think that worked in this one. I do see some of the arguments about some of his other movies, like almost getting there with female characters, but I thought this one did okay.
Well, I mean, even the female characters in Inception were strong characters. We might not have liked them, but they were strong female characters. They were not the focus of the movie.
But again, it was a male-dominated movie.
And really, it was just Ellen Page.
Female characters. Well, it was her, and there was
and the
his wife, his ex-wife,
his wife. Yeah.
Okay, true.
A very strong female character. You can't deny that.
Yeah.
But I think he struck a little bit of a balance in The Night Manager that he didn't strike here, and that is the equal time sort of thing. But I just think that there's something there. He does strike this balance that resonates in me. Sometimes we're weak. Sometimes we're strong, and we rely on the people around us to provide us with opportunities in order to either grow or the obstacles that force us to grow.
Okay. Did Nolan do The Night Manager?
Like that.
Oh, okay. I didn't know that.
Did he? Let me double check that. Okay. Sorry. Let me double check that.
All right. I need to see that was a limited series.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah.
I'll have to add that to my viewing list. Let's see. I don't think we really need to go through the different timelines for the characters necessarily. I think the movie did a fairly good job of keeping that pretty clean. If you compare this to something like Primer, where it was really confusing, people looping back around on themselves and stuff. I think this was pretty clean about keeping people in the loop on, no pun intended, on what was going on in the timeline as people were progressing back and forth. Even if it was confusing, it wasn't confusing for lack of being told. It was confusing because it was hard for us to wrap our brains around it as we were watching it.
I think it was good for that, with the one exception of Neil, which you really didn't get a full explanation of until the very end. And then watching it a second time would help you out with what he was doing the whole movie.
True.
Because, like, I didn't catch the little Easter egg at the very beginning in the opera scene. Not that you were supposed to, I don't think, the first time through. You know what I mean? It's like, oh, okay, that makes sense.
Yeah, it was definitely there, and there was definitely a moment, a pause where they focused on it. But yeah, you didn't have any context for it until very late in the film, and then on a rewatching. But I like that. I like movies where when you watch it a second time, you get new things from it. And like I said, I got new things from it a third time even, because I had a better understanding of the puzzle pieces that fit together the second time. So I was able to look at different things than I did the second time, which I was focusing on things I missed the first time. Like, I like the fact that this movie continues to have layer upon layer, almost Inception-like, that you can kind of pull apart. Like, so for example, one of the arguments, there are two theories that I want to throw out here. So one is a very common theory that if you take Maximilian, Kat's son, you take the last four letters, you reverse it, you get Neil. And that Neil is actually Max grown up. I kind of like that theory. I think it fits in not just with the literalness of the film, like it doesn't break the chronology or the canon, but it also fits the theme of the movie, I think. Some thematic elements that he would be the grown-up version of Max. You guys on board with that?
Yeah, I can see that.
Still thinking.
Okay, fair enough. Here's another one. The protagonist creates Tenet in the future, right, as an organization.
Yeah. Okay.
And it's revealed that this whole thing, Neil explains, this whole operation from start to finish was one big pincher movement. One big pincher movement. And then also, Priya, her involvement in things, she was working for the protagonist as well as today's protagonist working for the future protagonist. But then...
So he is everything.
Well, I saw a theory online that pointed out two things. Number one, it was interesting that you've got Priya actually running things, and she points out how useful it can be to have a man as the face of something in a masculine dominated world, but she's actually the one kind of running that side of things behind the scenes. And then you look at the protagonist in the movie, he's very much an operative. He has very little agency in this movie. He is reacting to everything. He's acting as a special operations operative, for lack of a better way to put it, throughout the entire movie. Yep. He's not really making a lot of decisions. He's not really planning a lot of strategies. There are some tactics that he comes up with, and he does make some decisions here and there, but ultimately he doesn't really seem like that much of a mastermind. Someone presented that Kat in the future is actually the protagonist.
Kat?
Yeah.
Really?
But why not him?
He's just not that. That's not where
it's more
his
believable
wheelhouse
for
is.
him to be the. Yeah, but honestly,
I'm not saying I subscribe to it one way or the other. I'm saying it's a very interesting thought experiment.
I thought the progression of the protagonist through the movie was good, that he's getting, away from the operational role more into a controlling role, which makes sense because then because it's in reverse, right? He founds the operation in the future with all the knowledge, and he goes backward through everything, getting less and less experience. So it makes sense that, like, at the end of the movie, he, takes out Priya.
Right. But I'm going to play devil's advocate. He does it in a response to Kat saying she's in danger. And yeah, he set that up. But again, that's much more a tactical maneuver than a strategical maneuver. And the whole pincher movement at the end of the film, he's getting instructions from, what's the guy's name? From that other military guy. Like, he's not the one calling any of the shots. He's dealing with tactics on his own in the field. So he's a brilliant tactician, but not necessarily a strategist.
Right. But even like at the very end, he's like, now, we're both working for me. And
but he only knows about that in the future because Neil told him that. So again, he doesn't know. He's just, that's hearsay.
Yeah. But Neil's working for him.
But he could be, again, the front, whereas there's a Priya behind it running it. And that Priya could be Kat.
I think the Priya is Kat.
Right.
As he's learning more and more going into the future, his saying there of saying that, we were both working for me. He knows that he is the guy in control and the guy running it down the road.
Well, he's been told that.
I had that feel that
he thinks that.
I had that feel that he was, but like they said, you have to drop the bullet first. He has to run it before he can, so I think he is the main guy. I think that is his, that's my supposition.
Okay. I'm not claiming to know one way or the other. I love, but here's the thing. I love that this movie can introduce people having theories like that, and we don't really know. And it is an interesting way of looking at it from a different point of view. And I love those kind of thought experiments.
It's just like, did the top fall or not?
Right.
I mean, you don't have to know.
You don't have to know, because that's not what this story is about.
Explain. Not everything. Yeah. And, we complain about movies that spoon feed you information, and none of us actually like that kind of movie.
Right.
I like movies that make you think and make
you.
Yeah.
You don't really know what really happened.
And that's what I'm saying. I'm okay not knowing whether Kat actually is a protagonist in the future or not. Like, I like the fact that there's more to explore there, and we don't have to know what the answers are. I just love that the world he created in this movie, there's depth to it. There's more there that you can sit and have conversations like that about. Like, we could literally sit there and argue back and forth on that point for quite a while, and it's a fun thought experiment. You don't get that very often in movies.
No.
Right.
No.
So we get rom-coms.
You get rom-coms.
Interesting.
That's what we should do. We should find some dumb comedy like movies and stuff that have some extra layer to it that people aren't considering, that makes it actually a worthwhile film. That could be challenging. I can only think of one off the top of my head.
Greatest Showman?
No, I was thinking Idiocracy, but all right. Any other final thoughts on this movie? I mean, we all liked it, right? We all would recommend people watch it.
Oh yeah. Yes, watch it. I would actually watch it again, and I'm going to do so. I want people also to watch it for just a grand movie experience. Even though we are watching these movies, which we should be seeing in the theater, but we're not because we're responsible.
We're not saying go to the theater. We're saying we want to. Yeah.
It's which we obviously they were made for the theater. That's I'm not saying we should be seeing them in theater. I'm saying that is what they were designed for. But get them at home and use this as a way to have a special night that you set aside to say, hey, I'm going to watch thing that was made for me to watch in the theater at home, and I'm going to set the same scene for myself. We're going to turn off our phones
and go put it in a different room.
Go put it in a different room. Yeah. Pay attention to the little M&M's commercial that will play in your head prior to, the little M&M's guys who say silence your cell phones, blah, 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 in the theater.
Oh,
Never
right.
mind.
Okay.
Eric.
Yeah, no, I'm with you now.
You probably don't get the same.
I'm with you now. I'm like, you could just go get yourself M&M's. Why do you have to?
Why is it still ticking? Yeah.
Because I'm sitting here thinking, sit on your couch, think of the fact that, wow, I really wish I could go out to the lobby and buy some really overpriced M&M's, except I'm not going to have enough time. I'm going to miss the trailers. I really don't want to spend $8.50 for like 4 M&M's.
Go to the lobby.
Let's not get kicked off YouTube. It's probably copyrighted.
So, but I want folks to start to watch movies like that, even though we're sitting on our couches, but make that experience for us because we need to do that, because we're not going out to theaters. But these movies are still coming out and the actors are still making them. And we want art to continue.
And so let's look at that real quick before we sign off here. 2 quick points on that. Number one, you said we need to. So number one, we need to because this is art. And this movie, I wouldn't necessarily think I would say this for something like Wonder Woman 84. But for Tenet, there's so much of the action scenes are fun. They're legitimately crazy.
Yeah.
You're like, wow, oh my gosh, I can't believe they did that. And then some of the directorial decisions. The moments where you're seeing things happen backwards and the birds flying and the sound editing playing in reverse and that the immersion of the movie is incredible. So it deserves.
Teaching those birds to fly backwards, that must have been
that was hard.
Can you imagine the animal wranglers on this movie trying to do that?
Yeah.
That's crazy. And those are some smart birds too to be able to figure that out. But it deserves to be seen as theatrically as you're able to do. This movie in particular, this is one of those where really you need to do it. And then number 2, there's something to be said psychologically about the fact that the parts of your brain that activate when you're focused on something, we're training ourselves to, and I'm not trying to get on a soapbox here, but it's real. It's the truth. We're training ourselves. I personally am training myself to not maintain an attention span for very long. It's like if your body, if you're going out and jogging or running, you train yourself to have some endurance and to be able to go for a while, or you can sprint and that can be fine too. But we're kind of between YouTube and social media and stuff like that. We're doing a lot of sprinting and we're not doing any sort of mental endurance things that much, unless it's something at work, maybe, in which case it's exhausting and not fun. Let's find some ways to have some mental endurance that's fun. And there are parts of your brain that activate when you're in more of a creative, immersed mode that a lot of us just aren't triggering anymore. I'm guilty of this myself. And I think that this movie is a perfect opportunity to sit down and do something like that. So yeah, what Robin said, mute your phone, go put it in a different room. Tell people if you need to, hey, I'm going off the grid for 3 hours, and just sit and enjoy this. It's a fun movie.
With your puppies or your kitties, of course. Or your fish.
Sure. It's interesting. My dog was less interested in this movie than I thought he was going to be.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
My puppies loved it.
We're going to have to work on that.
We're going to have to get a puppy show going here. And a cat show.
What do we want to talk about next?
Cats are very discerning.
Well, yeah.
What are we doing next besides The Greatest Showman?
We did that already, and we're not going to do it again.
But it's being televised soon.
That's not my problem. I had nothing to do with that. If you want to blame people for that, and boy, do I want to.
Problem for the rest of the world.
Right. That's not our problem.
There's nothing protecting them from seeing this movie again. So
I don't watch broadcast TV anymore. And in part because of things like this. So I don't know.
So
should we go offline and pick something, and then we'll drop in next time with a pick?
Well, we had a couple choices.
We did. We had talked about Six Underground. We talked about Soul.
Mm-hmm. I think we should use Soul. It's new. It's streaming. I haven't seen it. I want to see it.
There's the new. Now I haven't watched this, and I know we're no longer picking movies nobody's seen, but the new one on Netflix with Anthony Mackie that just came out. You probably haven't pulled up Netflix in the last few days, have you, Lou?
I was just watching Netflix before we started recording.
Oh, because like on the Apple TV and Fire Stick and stuff, it's like that big thing that comes up right when you load it, and it starts auto playing the trailer for it. It's like a sci-fi military movie.
I have seen it. Yeah, the Mission something or other.
Yeah. Looks good, but maybe we save that for a following week after one of us have already seen it.
What's it called?
Yes. It's called the Anthony Mackie Sci-Fi Netflix movie.
I don't think it's called that.
TM.
I'm gonna challenge you, and you're gonna lose your next Scrabble turn if I'm right.
It's called The Outside Wire.
My experience in playing Scrabble
outside the wire
is that most of my turns are wasted anyway, so that's not a big loss.
So let's do Soul.
Okay.
I mean, we could do Outside the Wire. It can't be as bad as...
I'll say this. The only consideration about Soul is that it is a Pixar movie that is very much kind of family-oriented, probably over the head of a lot of kids, and probably not on the radar of a lot of adults. So, throwing that out there. I thought it was a brilliant movie.
I mean, I am up to watch Outside the Wire. It looks really good.
I'll watch it too. Tell you what. So let's tentatively plan on that. We're going to watch Outside the Wire. And unless we decide that there's nothing to talk about it, we're going to cover that next week. And we're going to...
It can't be as bad as Uncut Gems.
That's true.
Or Primer.
It can't be.
Primer was good.
Cabin in the Woods. Or...
Cabin in the Woods? You liked Cabin in the Woods. You hypocrite.
I just wanted a reaction, gents.
My
God.
Can we return?
Gosh. I mean, I can do this. Watch. If you watch the video screen there, Lou, I just...
Can I get my money back?
Yeah, right. I want a refund for this podcast.
Gracious.
Yeah, so we'll do... what was it called? Outside the Wire?
Outside the Wire.
We'll do that unless we do Soul instead.
No.
Well, I'm saying because we need to watch Outside the Wire and make sure that it's not horrible. Because if it's horrible, we'll move on to something else.
No, if it's horrible, we'll cover it and tell our viewers that it's horrible, and then we'll move on to something else.
All right. So, ladies and gentlemen, when we come back and we say once again, we're never watching another movie without somebody having seen it first, at least one. It's going to be Robin.
We can blame Robin.
Yeah. She overruled us on this. So it's all Robin's fault. All right. So that's going to do it for this episode of Movie Chatter. Thank you for hanging out with us here. If you are listening to this as an audio podcast, thank you. But consider also watching it on YouTube. Go to randomchatter.com/YouTube. Hit that subscribe button below. Hit the like button. Hit the little notification button that lets you know when we've got new episodes posted. We have a lot of content that we're going to be bringing in 2021. Hopefully some actual new movies too, right? Looking forward to that for once. So we got a lot of good things on the radar. And we've also got other shows on YouTube as well. We do Random Chatter. We do our Star Wars shows, which, by the way, we are rebranding as Force Chatter. So Echo Base, Outer Rim, those are still going to exist, but they are going to exist in the same way they do now, but under the umbrella of one show. So much like Random Chatter, we have our review shows, we have our news shows. So Force Chatter, we're going to have our news shows like we used to with Echo Base. We're going to have our discussion shows like we used to with the Outer Rim. But then we're also going to have the flexibility to do some little short things. We're going to have the ability to do trailer analyses, things like that. We don't have to be beholden to a particular subset of a Star Wars show. And then that way we also have our own branding. We're not in confusion with any other YouTube channels or anything like that. It's going to be good stuff. And that is launching this coming week. So keep an eye out for that. Be sure to join us in Discord. Again, randomchatter.com/Discord. We've got a lot of great channels there. And again, hit the MovieChatter channel and let us know what you think about this whole end game thing from this movie, because, you know, we're not claiming to still understand everything about this movie. There's a lot of stuff in this. So let us know what you think. Finally, go to randomchatter.com/store if you'd like to help support the network. Those Echo Base and Outer Rim t-shirts, those are going to be taken off the market here pretty soon. So telling you, collector's item. Get them now. Bring them to a convention with you later on to get us to autograph them for you, devaluing them even more. So
I wonder if I know somebody who can get me one.
I don't know. I don't know if he likes you that much.
I know, right?
We'll see. And then finally, if you'd like to become an actual member of the Random Chatter network, we're a nonprofit organization. So any donations to the network, that doesn't go into our pockets. That goes directly into the operating costs of the network. Even just donating $1 a month through Patreon, you get to be a member of the network. There's additional channels unlocked in Discord. If you're at the $5 level or higher, there's bonus content that we post to Patreon. Right now, Tim and the other people from the MCU TV podcast that just started up are doing audio commentary episodes for WandaVision. We did that with The Mandalorian. We're going to be doing that for future stuff coming out, even when it's not a Marvel or Star Wars related project. We're going to continue doing that bonus content. So lots of reasons to check that out. So randomchatter.com/Patreon. And that's it. We will be back here again in a week. We'll be doing Thursday night next week, 8:30 p.m. Eastern time, if you'd like to join us live in the chat. And until then, take care, everybody.